Good afternoon, friends. Steve Banoon here with Israeli News Live here. And listen, America is just not a sovereign nation any longer. And I think if you begin to really seriously look at the events that are happening around the world, you'll realize our sovereignty has been compromised. Everything from the case with Charlie Kirk and his assassination there uh, to Israel bombing Qatar now, unprovoked, just to target Hamas leaders there, the genocide of Gaza, and then, of course, now, even in the West Bank, all the Palestinian men in this one particular community have been rounded up and taken captive by the Israeli military. And the world is doing nothing about it whatsoever. The U.S. is only complicit. We're the one nation that continues to push this narrative. It doesn't seem to ever change. And I think if you really begin to look at some of the factual information surrounding all of this, it'll start really coming to more to light of exactly what is really going on. I'm reminded by uh, an interview that was given many years ago by a name, excuse me, by a man. Uh, Gosh, I'm trying to think of the guy's name right off. Friedman. Friedman was his name, and he spoke about that Israel using the United States would actually end up ousting all the Palestinians from their homeland illegally. And of course, Friedman was a Jewish man, and he talked about this. He talked about how that Israel was going to do this, and I'm going to actually get his name for you. I'm trying to pull that up real quick here from the history there where I was watching this or listening to this yesterday. It's worth listening to. It's disturbing though. It's very disturbing to think of that. That we're being so duped down. And Benjamin Friedman, it was his name. And you should look up that interview that he did years ago because he's spot on to the dot. Going to World War One, World War Two, and he said World War Three would be preceded by Israel totally ousting everyone from the Middle East. There, they would throw all the Palestinians out of their homeland, and how that they were Khazarian Empire that it came in there to take over. And it's very true. I mean, we've had the Jewish scholar Fink out of Russia who has openly said that. Very true as well. But I want to show you the connection. Even Charlie Kirk is connected to that very issue there. Someone that steps out of line that's taken down because of that very thing. And our own family knows all too well when you are pro Zionist and then suddenly you have such an influence and you impact the people so well that one step out of line, then the next thing you know, you're being visited by Mossad agents there who are warning you to get back in step or else. And there are some that are saying that Charlie was had been invited by Netanyahu to Israel, especially after he started making a turn himself, questioning the things about what happened on October the 7th, and he refused. And there are some that claim that he was fearful of his life as a result, privately. So I can't substantiate those claims, but nonetheless, we're going to take a look today at things that are going on because it is a very serious situation that is happening around the world. As of right now, according to BBC and of course many news watches here in America, the U.S. here in Utah, they claim they have gotten their man. And I want to play a little clip of that for you here, just so you can see
Good
what's.
morning, ladies and gentlemen. We got him. On the evening of September 11th, a family member of Tyler Robinson reached out to a family friend who contacted the Washington County Sheriff's Office with information that Robinson had confessed to them or implied that he had committed the incident. This information was relayed to the Utah County Sheriff's Office and scene investigators at Utah Valley University. This information was also conveyed to the FBI. Investigators reviewed additional video footage from UVU surveillance and identified Robinson arriving on UVU campus in a gray Dodge Challenger at approximately 8:29.
Okay, so they got their man And to me, they got their patsy. But it's not just a patsy. You can't really blame the sheriff's department in Utah for arresting this man that confessed to this killing. But you have to understand the advanced technology that the U.S. has in order to be able to set up a scene nowadays to have a fall guy when, in fact, someone else could possibly be the real shooter. Let me kind of share with you what I'm talking about. Robert Duncan here, Dr. Robert Duncan, who also was killed last year, oddly enough, whistleblower, talks about the targeted individuals. He was part of the scientists that developed the voice to God tech, or voice to skull technology, or voice of God technology, as they call it, where they can, from a far distance across the country, can put thoughts in your mind and control you. Listen to some of the things that he says here in this interview here.
Weird category. Most people don't believe it's happening. You can be tortured in your own home. No one will believe you. But this is torture, and I want there to be no doubt about it. This is torture, destruction of life, and a destruction to misery for all these people, the innocent Americans. And it's a war crime. It's a crime against humanity for sure. They're trying to grasp all sorts of data from how effective can we make them kill each other themselves? How do you make a rational player go down to walk them to their death? The first logical thing they do is go to the police. Well, the police can't help you. They don't. They're going to give you a lockup and 72 hours and a psych ward.
One of the men behind the technology admits he created a monster. Dr. Robert Duncan put together the technology.
Let me kind of speed this up just a little bit there because we don't want to get flagged on this. So there we go.
Dr. Robert Duncan put together the technology that allows the government to transmit thoughts and voices into the heads of Americans.
I've worked on projects for the CIA, Justice Department, Department of Defense.
So you know for a fact that these weapons that you worked on, they're being used domestically today?
Absolutely.
Are there citizens of this country that are being abused with this technology?
Worse than abused, that's a light word. They're being tortured. They easily could be broadcasting across the country messages to people and causing them extreme pain.
We've run into a few people that claim they got voices in their head. When they talk to us, they seem totally normal. Are these people crazy, or is the government doing this to them?
The government's doing this to them. They're called voice of God weapons.
So the targeted individuals aren't crazy after all.
These are people within our government at a certain level making these decisions, and they're not necessarily our president or our elected officials.
That's exactly right. They can't be removed, and they're difficult to find. They hide in the dark crevices of our government. These technologies that are being
Here he is again. He's got a beard on in this one here.
These type of weapons can make you kill yourself or others. They hide it in their news broadcasts. Oh, he's just crazy. They don't go any deeper. The colonels.
As you notice what he says here, they make you kill yourself or even kill others. Now, the guy was already telling his father he'd rather commit suicide, from what one report said, the guy that they allegedly caught. But you really want to dig deeper, though, because what is really going on. Now, let's step back though for a moment. This here on Twitter, and by the way, I had another version of this up. It's already been removed from Twitter just within minutes this morning. They're trying to scrub the internet of something that Charlie Kirk was saying because it doesn't meet the narrative. I mean, wasn't it strange enough that Netanyahu comes out 20 minutes after this man was shot and announces his death publicly? Doesn't even give the U.S. time to be able to investigate or anything or to declare him dead themselves. But Netanyahu, the prime minister of Israel, comes and declares his death to the entire world and to make him a hero of Israel when in fact he was beginning to question Israel. That's someone trying to get control of the narrative. Every major Israeli politician already speaking about him too within hours of his death as well, glorifying Charlie Kirk. Now, Charlie Kirk, I never really had listened to this guy before, and that I know of at any time, but I respect the fact that he has a right of freedom of speech. He was very pro-Israel, but right there near the end, he began to challenge things, the Epstein files. He began to challenge, even in this interview here, whether or not Israel's the attack on October the 7th was an inside job. So he was a man that was very pro-Zionist, very similar to the way our family was very pro-Zionist, that suddenly makes a shift change because of waking up to what's really true and making a change. And you're affecting, in some cases, millions. In his case, definitely the younger generation, millions of people. Listen to what he says before they scrub this one too.
Times, the whole country's a fortress. When I first heard this story, I still had the same gut instinct that I did initially. I find this very hard to believe. I've been to that Gaza border. You cannot go 10 feet without running into a 19-year-old with an AR-15 or an automatic machine gun that is an IDF soldier, right? The whole country is surveilled. And so let me just kind of go through this. We don't talk about Israeli politics very often, and most Americans don't know this. The last 9 months, Israel was on the brink of civil war. It's not an exaggeration. This judicial stuff, there were hundreds of thousands of Israelis taking to the streets because Bibi Netanyahu was basically redefining the Israeli constitution. That's not an exaggeration, right? He said the judicial branch has too much power. There were protests planned this week against Netanyahu, where they anticipated tens of thousands of people to take to the streets. That's all gone, Patrick. Netanyahu now has an emergency government and a mandate to lead. I'm not willing to go so far that saying that Netanyahu knew or there was intelligence here. But I think some questions need to be asked. Was there a stand down order? Was there a stand down order? 6 hours? I don't believe it. Israel's the size of New Jersey. When I took a helicopter ride from Jerusalem to the Gaza border, it's 45 minutes. Wow. 6 hours. They're live streaming the killing of Jews. Did somebody in the government say stand down? That is a legitimate, non-conspiracy question. The whole country is the IDF. The whole country is. Yeah. And you're trying to tell me that they're going to concerts and kibbutzes and schools and...
Okay, now, this is what Charlie Kirk did. And I'm right there with him. I lived in Israel. I know what it's like over there. I was in a suicide bombing in 2004. I saw how rapid the Israeli forces are there. Within minutes, they were already there. Every defense, like he says, the whole country is a military country. It's a requirement by law, except for the religious. Okay, so the thing is, he's saying these things, and in our own case, there we were speaking at Mark and Susan's church here, just outside of Nashville, quite a few years back, and when we first came back to the United States, and Yana was really exposing the Noahide laws at that time. And we have two Israelis sitting in the audience, of which both approached me. One of them took me to the side, but the pastor and he had a military guy there that was his security. They stayed right there with me. They were already very leery of this guy. And he warned us, you're getting off track. You need to get back on track. And we want to help you get back on track. Well, Netanyahu, this man had a much higher stand than what we do, was inviting him to Israel. They wanted to help him get back on track before he affected millions. Well, we didn't. And my father-in-law died as a result. My wife nearly died. Both of us, we all three were targeted. Yana, I think, and myself are the main targets of that, but you kind of know the story on that. Waste time on that. Anyway, I want to show something to you, though, that's very, very concerning to me. Now, this was, let me see if I can get the right one here. This is put out by Mike Adams, a health ranger. He said, watch this piece of evidence being conveniently swept under the rug. A private jet disabled its location monitoring system while departing from Provo Airport 12 minutes from Utah Valley University, 1 hour after Charlie Kirk was assassinated. The jet is owned by Derek Maxfield, a wealthy donor to the Chabad Lubavitch organization there. Turned off its transponder. Flew out of there. Another thing that Mike brought out, and this here, I'm going to tell you something about this that I know personally. With the training that I received and stuff when I worked with that 3-letter agency there, what is going to be done here is nothing unusual. You see the guy there. They got him circled already here in this film here. He's right there, got his hand under his arm. and Charlie Kirk is right here. They needed a patsy. They used the skull, voice to skull technology to get this other guy to be a patsy. The other guy probably did pull the trigger and shot and really believed that he took him out. He probably was shocked. Maybe wasn't even aiming good, just followed the orders. What I don't want to do in showing this video here is Charlie being shot. All right. But I want you to know when you're facing Charlie here in the film here, all right, when we're looking at him sitting there straight on, when he is shot, he will go over to his right. Very clear. This man right here. Now, some people ask that, well, there's no flash, nothing like that. They have flash suppressors and things of that nature there. I'm going to try to move through this here. I don't want it to be seen there of him being shot. So there's two different people there. They're both being considered suspicious. But this guy has under his arm what you will see in a few minutes appears to be a weapon, without a doubt. The idea of shooting like this is a technique that is taught with this certain groups there. Also, this way here is another one that is taught to where at a particular distance, you're not going to miss. You're going for a body cavity shot and you don't miss. We would train over and over and over using these techniques and never miss. That's what's very strange for me is I know the technique that is used here. All right. So at this point here, because I don't want to get this to where you see this, I'm just going to try to do still frames. That way we don't actually witness what happens to him. But, excuse me. But we're going to get to this guy right here. And that's number 3. Let's see here, the right guy. Then you got this one guy that's filming. Can't help but wonder if that's not for the evidence that they will want for later. That's why I think the suspicion is there. But it's this guy right here with his glasses on his ear. And he's got that kind of a, I don't know what color you call that. It's not really green, but turquoise maybe colored shirt on. And they're going to show him from 2 different angles because they do catch this from 2 different angles. As he comes up, that's as he's moving back after he's already pulled the trigger there, right? He's making sure that the target is struck. Now, this is alleged, of course. Here he is here. There he is there from the other angle there. This is what you want to be able to see there. Underneath his arm there, if you look real close there, underneath his arm, he has something there. Right? Charlie is now hit. Now watch very carefully. I'm going to go frame by frame. There it is right there. Notice right there as it comes down from where he has it under his arm. And this right here, there's your weapon right there. That's not his hand, something in his hand, okay? That's what goes down. And see, there it is at a bigger distance there. So, and then he's going to quickly move back out of the way. That's what is very, very, very suspicious. So you have things like that. You have the Mossad plane that, or not Mossad, but a private jet turning off its transponder within 1 hour and leaving only 12 minutes from Utah Valley University. You have that happening. Then we jump over to the other issues. And now we look at what Israel is doing. And Mike Huckabee says U.S. has never asked Israel to avoid applying sovereignty in the West Bank. And he added the U.S. respects Israel as a sovereign nation and won't interfere. All because the Palestinians don't have a state officially because they were overthrown in 1948, even though there were borders dividing the two sides there, Israel has steadily taken over this entire region. And now, just like Gaza, they're going to drive all the occupants completely out. Again, go back and listen to Mr. Friedman and Benjamin Friedman to what he says. When you see this happen, we'll end up in a third world war. And we're going to lose this war. Why? Because we're not a sovereign nation. We are put out as lambs to the slaughter, is what it is. And Israel also, look at this right here. This is them openly wanting to
הדיור, אני חולמת על דירות ב$500,000 שקל, על קרקעות שהן כולם קרקעות יהודיות, מן הסתם, לזוגות צעירים, פתרון נהדר למשבר הדיור. אני בכלל מאמינה שלהתיישב
Talking about how the Judea and Samaria, Gaza, everything, is going to help the housing crisis for the young people in Israel. This is what she says, right? A wonderful solution. Channel 25 in Israel. You have the situation here. This is where Netanyahu transfers $1 billion to Hamas. Talking about Hamas being a terrorist group, but now I didn't have time to find it to pull it up for you, where Netanyahu's actually saying it before the Knesset. He's got to keep funding Hamas in order to keep them in power to keep the PLO from becoming a two-state. Listen.
New details have emerged. They show how he helped fund Hamas, how the Israeli Prime Minister helped Hamas get millions of dollars every year. This is the same group that he talks about destroying now, but for almost a decade, he secured millions of dollars for them, suitcases full of cash, delivered to Gaza with Israeli security. Yes. It started in 2014. Israel and Hamas had just fought a war. The Gaza Strip was in ruins. Qatar wanted to help to rebuild Gaza, so it started sending money. But this money could not be delivered without Israeli help. And that's where Netanyahu came in. He supported the plan. Not just that, he even lobbied Washington. In 2017, the US was not happy with Qatar's link to Hamas. It wanted to sanction Doha. But Netanyahu sent his lawmakers all the way to Washington. He told America that Qatar is not a problem. Instead, it is part of the solution, that they needed Qatar for a peaceful Gaza. So Qatar continued to give money to Hamas, and Israel supported them.
There you go. But now they're going to bomb Hamas in Qatar. And Qatar is wanting to strike Tel Aviv in revenge for all these bombs that were dropped on their nation recently and killed a lot of people. And the U.S. is not wanting to do it. Of course not. They can't. We're not a sovereign nation. You forget, AIPAC controls Washington. Every leader in this nation is controlled, with the exception of maybe one or two. But they won't last long as politicians because Israel controls both houses. Netanyahu is received always as a hero. Trump even has to pull his chair out and sit him down, showing that he is subservient to Netanyahu. We're not a sovereign nation. We're not. Charlie Kirk, he lost his life basically for the same reason. Listen to what said here on Piers Morgan here.
Well, I'll tell you some similarities. Indeed, the United States put Osama bin Laden on the CIA payroll in the 1980s. And similarly, Bibi Netanyahu put Hamas on the payroll. We all know that it was Netanyahu who went repeatedly to Qatar to tell Qatar, pay Hamas. They were funding Hamas. So yes, there's a lot of the similar duplicity.
So, Jeffrey Sachs, the man's brilliant. At least he's got the guts to say something. And here we have Qatar wanting to attack Tel Aviv.
Territories and will reserve the rights to retaliate and will take all the needed measures to retaliate. And under the directives of His Highness the Emir, the security of the citizens and the residents is our top priority. And based on that, as of tomorrow, God willing, we will review all the policies and the directives in order to deter such actions and measures in the future so that it cannot.
Building their case step by step. And of course, the United States will be the ones thrown under the bus there. Kind of in closing here, pro-Israel evangelical leaders call on Trump to tear up Tucker Carlson for pro-Iran posts. So much for freedom of speech. Laurie Cardozo Moore is the one that's behind this, pushing that, doesn't like what Tucker Carlson's saying. Of course, Laurie, we knew Laurie very personally, knew her very well. At one point, she's been to our home when we lived down in Fort Myers, Florida. When I first started off in ministry, I remember her telling me she was going over to the Miami area later that day, and I asked her, "What are you going to Miami for?" She said, "Look, it's not Christians that support our ministry; it's wealthy Jewish donors that support it." That's what Laurie said. So Laurie is, again, she's not a sovereign citizen of the United States. Can't be, because we're not a sovereign nation any longer. So she's under the thumb of her warlords, and they want Tucker Carlson brought down. So they're going to go after him. Just remember, it's voice to skull technology. This was one of the last interviews right here that Robert Duncan gave was with Craig LaForest. That's the one I first saw of this man. He was courageous enough to tell us the truth about what is going on. So what's happening in Utah, the guy's a patsy. But he probably really believes he accidentally shot the guy. Maybe he did fire a round that went off. Maybe he did. But he wasn't the one that fatally shot him. Especially if you were going for a front shot like that, when he wasn't shot from the front. He was shot from the side. God bless Charlie Kirk's family. Our sincerest condolences to his wife and to his children, who he was smart enough to keep out of the limelight of the public. Our deepest condolences and our sadness that they will have to grow up without their father. I wish Charlie would have lived, because he was starting to get the courage to really bring out some things, and maybe he could have caused some great strides for the younger generation to realize who the warlord master is in this nation. Stephen Benoon with Israeli News Live. Thank you, and thank you for your support.